Right now, we're going to take a little look at how this trade impacts everybody. Sixers, Nets, the East. Tim Legler, ESPN, joins us right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. After a long time hearing about it, it finally happened, Legs. Are you surprised that they were able to get it done at the deadline as opposed to the offseason?
No, not at all. Not surprised whatsoever. I was trying to, like everybody else, and I work with some of these guys, and I saw a lot of the reports going on yesterday and Wednesday leading up to it. And for me, I was like, there's no way they're not talking. Like some reporters were putting it out there that there was nothing going on whatsoever, that there's no discussions, no movement whatsoever, and I just knew that wasn't the case. And so I'm not surprised that it happened now. I think to drag this into the summer and allow, this to hang over the franchise and have a guy sit at home for an entire season that's in his prime and not hurt, they needed to get out from under that. And they needed to do it by getting the highest return that they possibly could. And I think James Harden represents that.
All right, so let's talk about Harden and his fit in Philadelphia. Most people see him and Embiid and say that's a great fit. How does Harden and Embiid tandem work for you?
Yeah, look, it could potentially be, the most potent offensive force in the league. It certainly is on paper. There's nobody has that kind of combination with a guy that dominant on the perimeter and a guy that dominant as a big. And both of them score on every platform, from deep at the line, in the paint, at the rim. So all four of them, both of them score all four ways. Nobody has that combination in the league. So on paper, it's the most potent offensive force in the league. Now, the practicality of it, once you get onto the court, there's an ebb and flow, man, and there's an alpha, each possession. And they're going to have to work through that. There might be some growing pains early. But, look, when you have two guys that are physically capable of overwhelming any matchup they get, you certainly have put yourself in a much better position in terms of the debate as a title contender, because prior to yesterday, they were not good enough. They weren't good enough with Ben Simmons. They weren't good enough certainly this year because they didn't replace Ben Simmons with anything. So they put themselves into a legitimate debate about whether they can win a title, and they weren't there prior to this trade.
Legs, they lost Curry, they lost Drummond. Is that a concern?
Definitely.
Who shoots for them? And look, over the years, they have been good enough. When Embiid left the floor, they were a disaster with Greg Monroe and Amir Johnson and Kyle O'Quinn. Is that a problem? Are they right there with everybody until Embiid sits down for 10 minutes?
Yeah, it's a problem. But here's one thing I will say. When you go and look at the guys that James Harden played with in Houston, maybe I could find some guys in Brooklyn too, but I'm just looking more at the rotating cast of shooters and role players that he had throughout his tenure in Houston. He made guys basically become household names as three-point shooters that were really mediocre at best shooters prior to that, because James Harden gives you an extra count. So if you're an average shooter or below average shooter, nothing matters more to you than time. You need more time. Like, great shooters don't need a lot of time. Guys that are mediocre, 35% for three-point shooters and below, every little bit of extra time you get makes you a better shooter, because you can get on balance. You're not rushed. You can focus a little bit more on finishing the shot, all of that stuff. And he did that for a bunch of guys in Houston. So even though, I don't like necessarily the depth of guys on their roster that you would label as a shooter, some of those guys are going to get the best looks of their life. Yeah. And that means they're going to be a better shooter than they've been before.
That's a great point, because you got a guy like Harris, 35%. Maybe he ticks back up closer to 40 where he has been. You got Danny Green. You got Yang. Obviously, Maxey. I'm really interested. How do you see Maxey's role changing, evolving? Is he affected because he's been doing a lot of ball handling? I would imagine that ball goes over to Harden. What's that mean for Maxey?
Nobody in this situation will be affected more negatively than Maxey. And I hate to say that, because, man, had this guy emerged and he actually, to me, had changed the dialogue around the Sixers about what they needed in return for Simmons. It got to the point where they didn't necessarily need a point guard. They needed a scorer, but maybe it was going to be a bigger wing if they could get one of those. And because he had evolved so much this season. Now you just look at it, and there's no other way around it. He's just not going to have the ball as much, okay? So this is a guy now that's going to have to figure out how to be effective without it. And then also I think Doc Rivers has to do a good job of staggering their minutes. You know, ultimately, Maxey on a championship caliber team, maybe he's a guy that's a combo guard off your bench that plays like a Jordan Clarkson or plays like a Lou Williams, you know, played back in the day, or a Jamal Crawford. Like, he's that kind of guy. He can run ball screen. He can certainly create offense, but he could come in and just be more of a scorer. So I think if they stagger the minutes, if he wants to keep him as a starter so it doesn't affect him or his confidence, if that's what they do, that's okay. But they're going to have to figure out a way to give him 6-8 minutes a half at least, where it's still his team like it was as a point guard prior to Harden's arrival, because I really do worry about what's going to happen to him and his ability to stay in rhythm. Now, he plays with so much energy and bounce, and he was so effective last year at spurt minutes. So, listen, he's a guy that's used to that, and he's still going to have an impact, and he's still a crowd favorite, and he's got a lot of confidence right now, but you can't escape the fact the ball just won't be in his hands nearly as much, and it's going to affect the rhythm of a guy that's not a pure shooter. He's a rhythm guy. When I have the ball a lot, yeah, I can knock down some threes occasionally. Now he's going to be standing around more, spotting up, waiting. It's just going to be a different feel for him. So I'm worried about his development for sure, and I'm really going to keep an eye on that. I'm curious to see what they do with him.
Me too. That was one of the first things. Let's flip it over to Brooklyn. Durant still out. Kyrie can't play at home. They get Curry. They got Drummond, so they have a little size now, which they lacked a bit. They get Harris. They've got Mills. They've got Curry, and they have now Simmons. Where does this put Brooklyn?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is, you know, based on 16 games together over more than a year and a half, who the hell knows what that was going to look like anyway? And I don't know that we ever would have gotten all three of those guys healthy and playing at the same time. I mean, it just didn't work out. So I got to say that they also, I think, have a better chance than they did prior to the trade, because I do think Ben Simmons does have a lot of value he brings to a team that's already equipped with multiple elite ball handling, scoring threats, right? They've got two. That was the biggest problem in Philly. You know, you're a starting point guard in this league. You can't think the game the way Ben Simmons thinks the game and be, you know, afraid of obvious aggressive scoring opportunities. You can't do it. You not in this league, not in modern basketball. Now, as a ball handling forward, which he will be in Brooklyn, great, because he's got two guys to take that off his plate. He can go guard basically any perimeter player in the league, which takes pressure off KD and Kyrie to have to guard those guys. You know, for instance, you know, you don't have Ben Simmons on the roster, and Philly were to play Brooklyn. Kyrie's got to guard James Harden. Good luck. Well, now you got Ben Simmons to take on that role. You know, Ben Simmons can guard a Giannis Antetokounmpo fairly effectively. He can guard a Middleton. He can guard a Jimmy Butler. He can guard a DeRozan, a Levine. He can guard all those guys and also create pace and easy scoring opportunities for the rest of your roster. Not so much KD and Kyrie. They don't need him for that. They need him to get shots for other guys and create pace by doing that, and then guard. He can certainly do all of those things. Now, the one component of it that we got to wait and see is he psychologically made up of the kind of DNA you need to be able to handle the pressure of this. He is now not only going to a team expected to win it this year, he's going to a team that now has to directly get to Philadelphia to make that happen. He's 90 miles away, and I just see him melting in that environment if it gets to that point. So psychologically, I think Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to be in for a surprise when they see some of the things that Ben Simmons runs from.
Last one for Tim Legler. We'll let you run, Tim. I know you're busy. A lot of stuff going on. I appreciate you jumping on. Eastern Conference, Philly, Brooklyn have changed dramatically. Miami's won. Bulls are there. Bucks are coming on. Who is your favorite now in the East? How do you rank those?
I'm going to go with the Sixers because of the ceiling of this. It's unlimited potential offensively what this could be. So I'm going to put them number one. I think the Bucks too, and I'm not going to be shocked if on the fly here Philadelphia and Brooklyn can't get it together in time to beat Milwaukee and they end up back in the finals. I'm not going to be shocked by that. The Bucks are playing great right now. Giannis is playing great right now. And they got great chemistry. They got great role definition. They're champions. They believe in each other. All that stuff. So I'm not as shocked, but the ceiling of Philly puts them 1 in my mind. I'd put Milwaukee 2, Brooklyn 3, Miami 4. And Miami's got to be feeling it the most because 3 weeks ago, they were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and it looked like they had put together the best defensive team in the league, and they were probably going to get to the finals. And now they wake up today and they find themselves 4th because 2 teams with 2 guys that forced their way out just made themselves better, and both of those guys have a better chance of playing in the finals. It's crazy. You can't script this. It's like some sort of reality show that was scripted, right? That's what we're looking at. And I said it earlier, if God loves basketball, we're going to get a conference final with Brooklyn and Philadelphia. There's nothing better for the league than what just happened yesterday because of the drama, and we might actually have an intense, much-needed, legit rivalry in the NBA, which we really don't have any of.
Good way to end it. Tim Legler, appreciate you jumping on. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, man.
Yeah, Mike, I will. Enjoy.
All right, Tim Legler, everybody, here on the Sports Bash.